Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Criterion Learning Series. Today, we are going to be covering performance reviews from the self-service perspective. And so let's go ahead and jump right into this. Switch over to my browser here, and we'll look at performance reviews and how we will perform a performance review in the system. I want to kind of set the stage a little bit for this too. I'm going to show a little bit of the back end of the system so you can kind of get an idea of how my performance review is configured, and then we'll go into actually doing the performance review. So let's go to the settings here, and I'll show you the performance review that I set up. I believe this is the same template I set up a few weeks ago when we did the configuration of performance reviews. So this should look familiar. I do have this performance review template here called 2024 Annual Review. And of course, you may have many performance review templates, as many as you need to cover whatever your situations are. Let's click into this a little bit so you can kind of see the settings within here. So you can see the scale I'm using for my review is a 1 to 5 scale that I've set up. The balance of my competencies and goals, the goal scale on there. And then here are the competencies that I have added in there with the different weighting that's available. So you can see how this is all configured. I'm not going to go into all the configuration. We just did this about a month ago and we have a video on it, so we'll talk about it. You can go back and review that there. And then I set up a review period here. Now, this is a custom one that I configured, but you can do them based off of dates as well instead of doing a custom, or you could do a recurring one. So just so you can see how this one is configured here, it's self and manager review. Now, I could have included others like peers and direct reports. I've chosen not to do that, but that's how I have that here. You'll notice it is a 360 review. And I did do this setting here with controlling the task sequence, so I can say which order that it goes, and is somebody able to see the scores and so forth from the previous person. Here's the workflow that I've used there. And then, as I mentioned, this is a custom one. So this is going to be a one-time review covering this date range here, August to July of this year. And then you'll see the review period there. Just to talk about the sequence, you'll see how I have this configured. Because I selected self and employee, or sorry, self and manager on the previous screen, I have those two choices here. And I've decided that the employee, the person who's being reviewed, is going to go first, and then the manager will go second. Of course, you could do this in a different order if you like, but that's how I have mine configured there. And then I did go ahead and I assigned it to everybody. So you can see this. Obviously, I'm not going to perform 100 plus reviews out there, but you can get an idea of what's going on here. And I can click in individual ones just to kind of see where we're at. If I needed to change something in here, like the dates, of course, I could do this on this screen. Perhaps I needed to change the dates, or if I needed to delete the employee, I'm able to do that. I do have some personal goals that I've configured, so you can see how these are done. Of course, these can be configured in different places. They might be configured by the employee. They might be adding them themselves, and then those are their goals. Maybe the manager adds them. Maybe HR adds them. They could be imported in here. So lots of different ways to add goals, but you can see how these are configured here. If I click on one, you'll notice how I have this one set up here. And then I don't have a company goal, but I'll add one just so you can see what that would look like here. Let me go ahead and add a company goal there. I'll make it 100%. All right, so go ahead and save that. All right, so that's how that is configured. Now, one thing to note is in your workflow, how do you have your workflow configured? This is the workflow that I've chosen, and you'll see here, the initiator would be the person submitting it, and then the approver would be whoever you named here as by employee, by position, by org structure, etc. I have mine going to Chris here for approval. Okay, so now that kind of set the table here, I did want to mention before I jump into here, I forgot to mention this up front, we are monitoring the chat and the Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please let us know and we'll be happy to answer those questions. All right, so once I added my employees to my reviews, you'll notice here, I did get a message about the performance review here as a notification. I also would have received an email if that was enabled. as well as a text message. So I could see that if I had set that up in my notifications, but you'll see this was right here. And where it's going to be located is here under performance review under my tasks. All right, so I'll click on my own. Now it has my name because it's for me, it's my self-review. And you can see this right here. I've got the review period as I just showed you. Now it's all set up. And here are the goals. So I would go through. Now it's possible that I may have answered these goals sometime during the year. So I might have assigned these at the beginning of the review period in August of last year. And now I'm coming through and just reviewing what I've done. But I also can do that right here. I can go through and score myself. Now my scale on this is either pass fail, but you might have a different scale. So you can see that. And then you'll notice here, I can see the description of what it means there. And so I'll just go through and I'll score myself on these. Same thing here with the company ones. Now I do need to put down a date here. I almost forgot this. This is the date that I achieved this goal. Let's go ahead and just say 10/1/23 and 1/1/24 and 2/1/24. Of course, I might want to put some notes over here. Okay. Now, I did want to point out this is an extension on my browser. We don't have a built-in Grammarly thing, but this is what this is here. You may be familiar with Grammarly. So this is specifically on mine. You may not see that on yours if you don't have Grammarly enabled. All right, as I go down, I've got my company goals. Let's say we pass this, and I'll just go ahead and put 731 there. And now I have my individual competencies. So I can go through and I can score these. Now, I do want to point out, if I come down to the bottom, I do have it enabled to show the scores down here. This is a setting back on the review where I could choose not to show those scores if I don't want to do that. So I can hide them from the employee and the manager so they don't see these scores, they don't concentrate on these scores as they're going through. All right, so let me go back up to the top here and I'll just go ahead and I'll score myself. Again, I can click on this to get more information on the actual competency here, as well as the scores. If these have descriptions in the scores, you'll be able to see those. Okay. I might want to put notes over here in this. These are, of course, optional, just like with the notes on the goals. I might want to put notes down here for the competencies as I go through. But pretty straightforward and doing this. Now, what I could have done back in the settings, let me show you where that is I could have made it so I manually put in the scores rather than scoring them based off of a drop-down menu. So in the review template, I can say allow manual competency rating. So I could have typed in a number versus having it from a drop-down. So that's where that is an option out there. And here's where I could have hidden the ratings and everything, the overall ratings as well as the competency ratings. What that would have done is it wouldn't show the score here. It would just have the drop-down menu. And then down here at the bottom, you'll notice I have these overall scores. It would hide this if I choose that option. Okay, and you can see here is the scoring. Now, I have my competencies, so they're all equal weighting. So if I go through and I do the math on all this, I'm going to get 82%. But it's possible that you might say one of these is more highly weighted than the others, or one's lower or something. So yours might not be as simple as add them all up and divide by 5. It could be a more complex calculation in there. My goals are also going to be considered as part of this overall score. You'll notice here that 82% and 100, this is not the average of those three, because I made the competencies 80% of my score and the personal and company goals only 10% each. So that's where the 85.6 comes in. You will see here, I don't have a description next to my overall score. That's because on my rating scale, I didn't put a description for that right here. So you'll see I only have one for this one. If I put one down here, it would show in this box. That's what this box would show, is the description from right here. It doesn't show this one, it shows this. So if I had one, it would show right there. You don't, of course, have to have one, but that's just be aware of what that's for. Okay, now as the performer for this, perhaps I get pulled away, I don't finish this, and I want to save where I'm at and come back. I can always click save and then, come back, whether I log out and log back in or whatever. I can come back to this. If I am ready to actually submit it, I can do this. Now, if I hadn't clicked save, cancel would close and it would not save any changes. So just be aware of that. I'll go ahead and submit this. I have my workflow where it requires a signature. So I can sign this signature here, or if I have a saved one, I can use that saved signature. This is something that can be set up over here in your user settings. All right. So now that is submitted off for this. I have other tasks here. I'm just going to cancel this, but you'll notice here, it's gone. Now what happens is that the approver for the review now needs to go in and approve it so that the next person, the manager, can go ahead and do their part of the review. So as the approver, I would go in and I can review what the person did, and then it will move on to the next one. Let me switch over to another browser where I have the approver logged in. So I'm here as Chris, he's the approver. Now I'm approving this one, but here's the one for Ted. So I can review this one and see what Ted had to say, and then go ahead and approve or reject this one here. Of course, if I reject, I'm required to put in a comment. I don't have to put in a comment if I don't want to do that, but perhaps I wanted to say well done or something and hit approve. So what this will now do is allow the manager to go through and do their part of the review. In fact, Ted is Chris's manager, so I'm going to go through and approve this one just so you can kind of see what this looks like. But I'll also go in and I'll show you Ted's. All right, so that one is done over there. And I'm going to switch back to my other browser. It's easier than logging out, logging in, to kind of show you what I would see. All right, so I now have this notification that it was approved. So my part of my own performance review is done. All right, but now I've got one to do for the employee that I'm managing. I'm the manager of Chris, so my performance review for Chris needs to be completed. So now I can come over here to the performance review. I'll see Chris, not myself, and I can see his review here. So again, it's the same period, and I can go through here and I can see what he did. Now you'll notice, let me just go ahead and put these goals in here and put the dates. All right, now you'll see here, when I get down to the competencies, I'm able to see what Chris scored because I have that enabled in there to be able to view the scores and his notes if I had any notes. So this is Ted's score for Chris on the analysis. Here is Chris's own score. It's possible that I have peers or other people on here, and I would see those listed here as well. So if there were peers, it might have an extra, 1 or 2 rows or whatever down below this. But this is Chris's score, and it would say peer score in that particular situation. So I can go through here, and perhaps I agree with him, perhaps I don't. I can go ahead and change that if I need to do this. So I can see this because I decided to share. This is just an option. You don't need to share the scores if you don't want to. You also don't need to set it so that there is a specific order. If you don't want to have the manager go after the employee, if they could do it at any time, that's an option back on the settings over here. I go in there, I can not check this box. If I don't check it, both Chris and Ted could have been doing them at the same time. But this means that when I do this control sequence here, that sequence box drives who's doing it. All right, so I'll go over here and let me just finish scoring this. Okay. Now, one thing you're not seeing on here, because it is not a recurring review, is I don't have the ability to put in future goals because this is a one-time review because it's set as custom. If it was set as a recurring review, perhaps, based off our anniversary date or something like that, right here above the score, below the last competency, I would have a section to put in goals for the next review cycle. So that would be there for me to do as an option on a recurring review, because that means it's going to have a review next year for the same template and everything like that. It's going to use those same goals next year. So that's why that is available for me in that situation. Because this is a one-time review, I can't set future goals because it doesn't have a future repeat of this same review cycle. All right, so here I can see the scoring that I've done. And so here it is, and you'll notice the scores there, and I will go ahead and submit this and sign it. And there we go. All right, so that is my review of Chris. Now what I would need to do is log in as Chris to approve that and be able to complete that there. What I also want to do, this time I am going to log out because I don't have a third browser open. I should have done that, is I'm going to log in as Ted's manager. And I think I did it right. And do his review, so you can kind of see, what he sees for that one. So in this situation, she has her own, and she also has Ted's out there. So this will be Ted's review that I just did. This is an older one, and we can ignore that. This is the review I just did. And again, I can see the scores as I go down, what he scored on this one here. And I'll just say he passed all these things. Again, I do need to put the dates. Okay, and let's see, did a great job on meetings there. And now I can go through and put in my scores right here. Okay, so here you'll see the scores, the overall score, and so forth, and I can go ahead and submit that one. I don't have a saved signature for her, so I'll just make one up. And now her part of Ted's review is done. So very straightforward as far as that's concerned. And then, like I mentioned, I would need to have the approver come in and approve that review that she just did, as well as the one Ted did for Chris. So I could go ahead and approve those there. So I'm going to do that in another window. While you don't need to see this, I'm just going and approving those two, just because I want to show you what it will look like when I publish these reviews out there for the employees to be able to see them. So that'll be the last step here. I need to just log out of here because she's not an administrator. So let's do this here real quick. And sign back in as Ted. He is an administrator, so I'm able to come back into here. So as far as he's concerned, he's able to see that the performance review that he submitted was approved. There's nothing more for him to do on that, but there is more to do if you want to actually see these reviews out there. The employees want to be able to see the reviews, or you want to allow the employees to see the reviews out there. So here, when I come back into that performance period, now when I come on over to my list of employees, you'll notice these first two, they are approved. And of course I can click in here and see, they are completely approved. Now, if I'd come in here before, let's say Ted had completed it, or before it was finally approved, I'd be able to see the step. Maybe this one would show approved and this one would say not started or submitted, but it would show the status. Okay, so that is that. Now, what I would like to do is to publish these reviews. So if I had completed all of them, I can choose to publish all. Of course, I haven't completed all of them, or maybe you don't want to complete all of them. So you can choose which ones you would like to publish out here. Now, you'll notice I can select anything I want out here, even the ones that are not completed, but I'm just going to do the two that are completed. And you'll notice here, where do I want to publish it out to? So publish it to all. In my situation, the manager is the reviewer. So this is the same thing, but it's possible the manager was not a reviewer. So I do want to allow them to see it. But if I published all, to go to all three of these, but I can choose just to publish it to the employee, just to the reviewer, or just to the manager, or some combination of these if I wanted to do it. Like I said, in my situation, the reviewer is the manager. So this is kind of a duplicate, but maybe the manager wasn't there. Maybe they were like peers and you wanted them to be able to see it. You could allow them to do that. Or I could check all three. It doesn't really matter what I check there. If I check all three, it's the same as checking publish to all. And I'll go ahead and publish those out there. All right, so on the over here on the admin side, when I go to my employees, let me just refresh here to see my employees. If I go over to Chris as an example, I can go down to his performance reviews and I can see that it is published, and I can see the results of this if I wanted to see that. But you'll notice how it is published here. It's checked off as published. And so I can see that it was done. Now, I can also click on this to see the individual reviews for these people. Like if I want to see what Chris did, I can click on this and I can see this. I can also choose to like unpublish if I don't want them to see that. I can unpublish that. But here you'll see the scoring that was on there and the goals and so forth. So able to see all that information on the review here. And of course, I can download a copy of this if I want to see it in a PDF format. So that's available here on the HR side to be able to view those. Now, of course, if it was just one review, it was not a manager employee type situation, I wouldn't have this little arrow. It would just have one line entry. This arrow expands it out so you can see all of the reviews underneath it. Now, what does the employee see? Let me just hit refresh. And now I'm able to come out here and just so you can see, I'll open this up. When I click onto this, I'll be able to go to my performance and my reviews and see the reviews that are out here. So here's the 2024 review. Now, just to be clear, the reviewer here is blank because I'm aggregating the scores into one. If I wasn't, I'd be able to see the two different people, and that way I could see individually what did my manager do, what did I do? But because it's aggregated, it's going to be combined into one right here. So here I could see everything. This is a little bit different display because it shows the person right there that did it. Right, and my goals. And of course, I can download this if I want to see a copy of it, just so you can see what this looks like. If you've never seen this, is a PDF version of that display. And I think this will, if I can get it to show in here, that'd be excellent. Here we go. All right, so here is the review in here. You can see this in a PDF if they want to view that. And there's the totals down here at the bottom. Now, again, I did it aggregated, so it doesn't show the individuals, it shows the total. All right, so that's how you can perform the review, look at the reviews and so forth. As I mentioned, I do want to talk about like goals. So if I had a future review period out there, I can add goals out here for my next review period. I can also just look at the goals for a certain review period if I want to using this. So if I want to look at just these, I can do this. Now these are approved, so I can't change anything, but I can look at the goals out there for previous periods if I want to, or I can see all the goals I've had. As I mentioned, I can add goals. So let me just quickly do this. I'll create a review for the future. So let me just say September review out here real quick. I can spell, I really can. All right, and 2024, I'll just do self in this situation because I'm just doing this very quickly. And this is going to be a custom one. As I mentioned, I could use tokens in here if I wanted to, so that I don't have to hard code the dates. And 9/30, 2024. All right, so I'll save that and I'll go and assign that very quickly to Ted, just so you can see what it would look like to add goals out there for the future. So go ahead and do this. All right, and I'll save. So that is now available for me to add goals to it. Now, I do want to point out I can come into here and I can go over to my goals and I can add goals in here. So as the administrator, the HR user, I can go out here, I can select the employee, and I can add in goals manually here to whatever I want to say for my goal. So if I say goal 1, And let's say it's 100%. And use workflow. All right, save that. Oops. Okay, so I can do that. You'll notice here I can import. So if I wanted to import in my goals, that's certainly possible. But that's added a goal. So if I go back over to self-service and I refresh, I'll be able to see that here's that September 1. And just to show it a little more clearly, if I just do September, there that is. But now I can add another one. So perhaps I wanted to put a different goal out here and say goal 2 or something like that. I can put in my goal here. Now you'll notice here it says September and so forth. So I can put this and use my workflows and do that. Now I may want to change the weighting here and do like 50-50. It does need to add up to 100%. You'll notice I can't submit until it adds up to 100%. All right, so I have to set that weighting as soon as it equals 100%. It does that, and then I can submit this and so forth. Now, if I was the manager, you'll notice team goals. So I can come out here and I can set goals for people on my team. So if I go back to, I don't know if I'm gonna see here, August review. All right, here is Chris's, but now I can add other people that are on my team. So these other people, let's say for Roy, I want to put one here. Be nice, and okay, 100%. So this is just a third option, or really kind of a fourth. You include the import as one of them to add goals here as the manager. So whatever way you want to do it, and as I mentioned, the other one that's kind of sometimes available, sometimes not, is the future goals on a review, but that only happens if it is a recurring review. So I can't, I could show that if I set up a recurring review, but that is another way of adding goals. So I wanted to show kind of the different ways of doing that. I do want to point out team reviews. So I can come out here, select that review cycle. Now I'll be able to see Chris's out here, and I want to, look at his review. I can see his if I needed to see the members of my team. All right, so lots of different ways to kind of interact with this stuff in self-service. Now, these other things, feedback and journals are not performance review. They're not tied to performance reviews. You might use them in a performance review for information, but they're not like a requirement or anything like that on a performance review. So I did want to talk about it because we have a couple of more minutes here. So journals allows you to put notes on employees. Perhaps you want to just have a reminder about something that Chris did or whatever. I can come over to somebody. So I click on journal entry as a manager. I can select the person that I want to put the note on. This is a drop-down menu that's in the code table, so I can do whatever I want there. Led the project on his own, whatever. All right, as my title there, and then I can type in a nice long note in here if I need to. You'll notice I can do like copy and paste. I can do formatting and so forth. If I want links, etc., I can do that. Private would mean that Chris would not see it if he clicks on my journals. If it's not private, he would be able to see that right there. If I need to include attachment, I can, but that now adds a note. So it could be useful to do throughout the year as things happen, so you can come back out there and click on team journals in the future and see those journal entries that you've added. All right, the feedback, I would need to configure some stuff for feedback. I'm not sure if it is configured. Okay, so here I can give feedback. This is where I can see the feedback that's been out there. So I'll just quickly cover feedback as a kind of performance review because you can provide quick feedback on an employee. This does require some setup. So I can select the recipient. This requires the setup. The questions are done on the back end under the code tables, but I can go ahead and, how did you perform here? I did well. And then you'll see here, well done, needs to improve. And I can send that in. So again, it's not exactly performance review. It's kind of like a quick feedback thing on something like a journal entry, but it's more structured because you choose the feedback type on there. All right, so that is performance reviews from the ESS perspective. I appreciate your time today. Let me show you very quickly the upcoming schedule. All right, so you'll see here, I do see that we have a hand raised. I don't know if we can unmute people. So if you have a question, you can put it in the participants or the chat, the chat or the Q&A. and then we can answer that. So upcoming, in 2 weeks, we're going to be covering workflows and org structures. So this is something we did cover a couple of years ago. And so we're revisiting this topic because we've made some changes to workflows. In the meantime, we've also added a little bit into org structures in the succession planning. So that's there, but we're going to cover those to just clarify if you never saw it or you have questions on there. We can help you out with that. So that's in 2 weeks on the 15th. And then at the end of the month, we're going to cover data grids. So this is where you can create your own reports using modules and tables and so forth to generate reports on your own. Of course, there's many standard reports in the system, but they usually don't meet every single need, and you need something specific. That's where the data grid comes into play. So that'll be in 4 weeks at the end of the month here. So I do want to thank you for your time. Hopefully everybody was able to get their questions answered. I don't know if the people who raised their hand did put a question or put anything in the chat, but if you did not, if you still have questions, you can reach out to us, help@criterionhcm.com. You can also submit a ticket directly in the software on the admin side. If you click on the question mark in the upper right-hand corner, there is the ability to submit a ticket there. So if you have any questions, you can also use that.